Hi, my name is Sage, and this week, well, actually last week, I put up a poll on my YouTube channel, and since it was tied, I'm gonna roll a dice, and if it's an odd number, it's gonna be a paper mache week, and if it's an even one, it's gonna be a clay one. And I mean, y'all know by the title, but past me didn't know, so I rolled a dice, and well, bam, it's a 1! Yay! So it's gonna be a paper mache week. But before I break out the mache, I'm gonna have to paint a canvas, and well, bam, I paint it black, and this is going to be the base of my project. And speaking of base, here I am breaking out the tinfoil to build a base for the snake I'm making. And what I'm doing is scrunching up some tinfoil while also putting curves in it, and with every new piece that I add on, I wrap the new foil around the last one, so everything is all connected. The last part I add on is the head, which is just a bit thicker than the body, and now my snake looks like a noodle, so it's time to bulk him up, so bam! I just kept adding more and more layers on top of what I already did, so now he looks like this. This next part, I take even more tinfoil and begin to make a stem, as I thought I was gonna add a mushroom to this, but it doesn't make it to the final piece. But past me did not know that, so right now I'm just full on making a mushroom and hoping for the best. And here I'm adding on tinfoil to the top of the mushroom to make the head of it. I do my best to make the middle of it chonky, while the edges get less and less to make sure that they stay smaller. I also pinch them as well so they are more compact. And now the mushroom looks like this, yay! And when I put it on the canvas, it should have been foreshadowing to me because it just rolled right off. But I gave a thumbs up anyway because I thought I was just gonna glue it on, so it didn't even matter. Here I make a C out of tinfoil, and this is going to be a crescent moon. I also bulk it up, and what bam! Moon! But now it's time for the mache, and I used a different mache method this time. I'm gonna tell you all about it. So your first question will probably be, why is your mache blue? It's because I added blue food dye to it because I think it shows up better on camera when there's a color to it. But that's not the crazy part, at least for me. This mixture is roughly 60% runny Elmer's glue and approximately 40% water. I don't like to do math, so it was an eyeball estimate. So I usually use a 50-50 flour and water mixture with some salt sprinkled into it, but I wanted to try the glue method instead. I noticed that the glue mache doesn't hold down the ripped newspaper pieces like the flour mache does, so I had to pack a lot more of the glue mache on. But I usually have to go over the flour mache with a paper towel afterwards to absorb all of the excess, and with the glue one I didn't. I just went crazy with the glue mache, putting down one layer of that, and then a newspaper piece, and then more mache up top of that, and I continue to do this on all three things until finally they look like this. So now I gotta wait for them to dry. But while those are drying, I'm going to make some roses out of construction paper. And I've made this flower before in my Paper Monster video, so if you've seen that, you already know how to make this flower, but this time I did some cool video transitions. At least I attempted to. So first things first, I used black construction paper and cut out 4 10cm by 10cm pieces. They are not perfect, but they are good enough. And so I take the first piece of construction paper, fold that in half to make a triangle, before doing that twice more so it looks like this. I then use my scissors and cut out a teardrop shape. And then once I unfold it, it kind of looks like the cousin to the clover, and that's perfect. I then do that to the other 3 pieces as well. Incoming cool transition, yay! I was so proud of me when I did this. But anyway, after that, I then take the first one and I cut out 1 petal, and then the second one I cut out 2, the third I cut out 3, and the fourth I just cut right in half. And you may be like, Sage, why are you doing this? It's because I'm gonna take my hot glue and I'm gonna make them all into tiny little cones that are gonna go into one another. And I should have learned from the last time doing this because I used hot glue then too, and I'm left with a bunch of little stringies afterwards. You can always use the hairdryer and melt them all away afterwards, but mine wasn't too bad this time, so it was okay. And for this cone specifically, I ended up adding too much hot glue, so I added in the smaller cone right away before the excess hot glue got solid and made a bump, so that's why I did that. That was just my bad. Oh, and I also got rid of a 1/2 of the flower that I cut in half because since every cone goes into one another because it's one less petal than the previous, it didn't make any sense to have two the same. And here I begin to stack them all, so I'm just adding some hot glue in the middle and pressing all of the cones into one another until I get to the final petals. And for them, I do have to cut out the tips because otherwise they'll just come out way too much and it doesn't look right. But once I get all of them cut and put them in, the flower is now done, yay! And you may be like, Sage, that's one flower, but in the thumbnail, I thought I saw more than one. And you'd be right. Well, bam, I then repeat these steps another 3 times, so now I have 4. And now it's the next day, so I can start painting the paper mache. And I start by painting the snake first, just because it's the biggest, and I eventually end up doing 3 layers of white paint, but while the first layer dries on the snake, I move on to the mushroom that I think I'm still gonna add, and I paint this white as well, before then, plot twist, painting the moon a gold color. And since I want gold accents in this art piece, I also paint the tips of the roses with gold as well to highlight them. So I take my paintbrush and lightly dab the edges, and I do this on all 4. And because the black roses are going on a black canvas, I knew I wanted to highlight them in some way, and the gold really brought this idea of mine to life. And now that the roses are highlighted, I move on to painting the second and third layers on the snake, mushroom, and moon. So bam, transition! It doesn't really look too different on camera, but in real life, it looks a lot better. And here I'm planning how I want everything laid out on the canvas. I also decided, like, somewhat last minute that I'm gonna use some dollar store leaves I got off of a rose to go behind my handmade roses. I thought they would just look cute together, and then here, this was like the final decision where I was like, I'm not gonna add the mushroom because I like the roses and the leaves better. So instead of painting any details on the mushroom, I move on to painting the snake scales. And if you remember from my paper monster video, I tried to make a cape out of this material, but I figured this would be a great way to actually make some scales for the snake. And the idea was definitely there, but the execution was... It was pretty bad, I'm not gonna lie. This is very much trust the process. But I knew going into it that the gold paint always takes a few layers to really take, so I'm just telling myself that at that moment. But the thing that threw everything off was that the snake isn't completely flat, so when I laid down this material, it just didn't take the way that it should have. So once I do the first layer on the scales and the eye, I go in afterwards without the material and do a few layers of gold paint on the scales that look decent enough to save. Before then letting those scales completely dry, and off screen I used the hairdryer to help speed up the process because it was taking so long. But once they are dried, this is what they look like, and they definitely look a lot better, but I still wanted to clean everything up, so I used the white paint and clean up any scales that didn't look good and the edges on the ones that I did like. But since the gold is very shimmery, I ended up having to do another 3 layers of white paint around all the scales. So I do that, and now this is what they look like. And there's one final step, which is to hot glue everything onto the canvas. And I remember Googling it before and it said don't use hot glue on a canvas, but I didn't adhere to that and I just did what I wanted to. Oh, but another thing that I should actually mention is that, so you know the flower mache? That is a lot heavier than the glue mache. The glue one's a lot lighter, and if you're gluing anything onto a canvas, which Google told me not to, maybe that's something that you should know. Because I didn't know and I just winged it. But once everything is hot glued, the craft is now done, yay! So now I'm gonna do some glamour shots. Thank you so much for watching, I really appreciate it, and hopefully I'll see you in the next one. Bye bye!